Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. And we're going to be doing a little bit of a transfer news wrap up because a lot of stories heating up regarding some key South African and Springbok players, as well as a very important Australian player, which kind of, I think, paints a bit of a picture on the issue with the Wallabies at the moment. But some very interesting news on Villaroo, on Damien Willemse as well. So before we get into it, please do smash the like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. We'll start with this. And big news coming for Stormers fans is amongst a lot of interest from Leinster about Damien Willemse. Stormers have come out and basically said that he will not be leaving the club and they will not be taking any up offers currently at the moment. So at the moment, he's set to basically play until 2027. That's where his contract comes up to an end. But Stormers actually released a statement about it saying the following. Saying the Stormers can confirm that Damien Willemse will not be leaving the club to take up any offers as he remains contracted until 2027. Willemse will not be taking up any alternative offers despite further speculation posed in the guise of an April Fool's joke, although many clubs around the world are obviously interested in the service of the double World Cup winner. I don't think it was an April Fool's joke. I think Leinster were genuinely in on Damien Willemse, and it makes a lot of sense, to be perfectly honest. I actually wouldn't even mind him going. I think obviously Stormers fans don't want to lose him, but I think that he'd be quite interesting to see what he would do learning in sort of the Leinster systems, playing in Ireland, different conditions, and the likes. Obviously, gets a very big wage bill off of Stormers' sort of hands. He is somebody that I'd like to stay in South Africa, but I think it would be an interesting move for him. He'd play at 12, he'd play at 15, he might even play at 10. I think he could develop quite a lot. And I think that versatility is probably why Leinster are in on him. Because, first of all, on his day, he's probably the best fullback in World Rugby, and he's been phenomenal inside centre. And Geordie Barrett, for example, has been a huge addition to Leinster. And if you then replace Geordie Barrett with Damien Willemse, then I'll tell you what, that does a lot to that Leinster side. Especially because he can play 10, 12, 15. I mean, he should probably be one of the most sought-after players in World Rugby because he is so versatile and so good. Let's not even talk about that. Obviously, coming back from injury, still sort of finding his feet and the likes of that. But we all know just how good he can be once he gets into full fitness, and he really is. I think during the 2023 World Cup, I would have put him in the top 5 best players in the world. I genuinely think he was playing that well. Yeah, during that World Cup, he was just basically flawless. He was making an impact on defense, making an impact on attack. I felt that he was becoming a leader. I think he was really sort of starting to step up and look to try and make a difference on his own rather than just sort of waiting for moments. So good news for Stormers fans, bad news for Leinster fans. For South African fans, I think probably good news in general, because obviously you want to see him play as much as possible. But I do think that it would have been an interesting move. Speaking of interesting moves, no Leinster. Big move. So yeah, so Wallabies have basically, or especially Eddie Jones and the likes, bet on him and have backed him as the starting 10. But he has officially made the decision to leave Australia, and he has signed a 1-year deal with an option to extend an additional deal, additional year at a club in the Japan Rugby League 1. It hasn't been named where he's going, but I think a main thing is sort of asking about why he looked to leave. And he was quite open and honest about it. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And basically saying, I've had 3 or 4 coaches ever since I debuted professionally. It's a test level, by the way. So Joe not being here after the rugby championship definitely made it tougher for me to stay. I think that's the big thing. There's been no continuity in that Wallabies setup. There's been no sort of structure and solidity. And I think that's the biggest problem. It's a continuously moving target. Players have kind of been thrown in, thrown out, discarded, backed. And there's no real sort of system, and you feel like there's no, very straightforward selection policy as well. And if you're sitting there, obviously most players will do whatever they can to play for their country, but when you're sitting there and there's absolutely no security, with regards to whether you're going to be part of the Wallaby side or whether you're going to be thrown to the side, whether you're going to be the number 1 choice, number 2 choice, and the likes of that. And I do think that, him being thrown in around has really affected his development. I think that he could become a world-class number 10. And I think we've seen moments of that from him, but he hasn't really developed into the type of flower half that I think the Wallabies players were hoping. In terms of that, he's basically said just the unknown of who the next coach will be, and me potentially, if I do stay, then go through the whole cycle again. He said, I'm not putting it on Joe because I totally understand why he's leaving. He's got a family. He's got to look after his family as well. I'm forever thankful for what he's done for me in my career, especially last year, and I thanked him on that as well. So yeah, that was probably one of the main reasons why I decided to head overseas. I believe everything happens for a reason as well. Without going through all those troubles, I wouldn't say troubled times, but those times I wouldn't be the player I am today. It's a tough one because I definitely want to stay ideally. So this is the thing, he's been thrown out really, in and out, and I think he'd like to stay, but he's basically looking at Australia rugby, and it's a bit of a joke. And I think he's saying, well, this is a waste of my time, and I can't plan my future around an organization and a team which is just a bit of a disaster at the moment. And I think this is going to hold true for a lot of Australian players, and they're going to continue losing players, like Mark Nawangani-Tawase, who went to rugby league, and again, it's the chaos of it. If it was steady and solid and consistent, then I think a lot of players would be able to commit to Australian rugby. But it's just far too what's the right word? I think inconsistent is the main thing. It's just too choppy and changey, really. And until they sort that out, I think they continue to struggle. But good news for Bulls fans is that last week, I think it was Friday or Friday, Willemse obviously has re-signed for the Bulls until 2027. Now, I don't think we're going to see him play Test rugby much past this year, but it's a big, big signing for the Bulls, who've obviously got some nice youngsters coming through. But especially with Andre Pollard coming back, who's obviously going to be a really big addition to the Bulls side. Kurt Lawrence, we don't know if he's going to come back or not. Kanan Moody, Johan Goosen, David Creel. They've got some really, really talented backline players. The problem is when you start adding more Springboks, you then have to start worrying about when these Springboks won't play and the kind of the rotation that goes on with the box. And I think that Willemse staying on, especially when it becomes basically a full-time Bulls player versus a Bok player, then that becomes huge in terms of the consistency of selection and being able to sort of plan your season a bit better, where obviously the injuries might change things, but where you can basically rely and say, right, well, Hodge Park's going to rest here, Billy will be able to do that, Jan Goosen will be in there, and you can kind of better spread your resources to kind of navigate through the season. And then finally, a big story is that Dylan Richardson is set to leave the Sharks, and it looks like Edinburgh are looking at him as the potential replacement for Dave Cherry, who is looking to move to France. He's played one game for Scotland, has Dylan Richardson, kind of got him over their captain, and hasn't really played since then. I think he struggled with game time at the Sharks as well. I do think that he's good enough to play for Scotland if he can get a decent run, but struggling to find those opportunities, especially at hooker, where they've got so many different players. And I think that if he goes over to Edinburgh, basically being backed as one or either the starting or the replacement hooker, he'll play in there week in, week out, be able to get a bit of a run of games in sort of his more natural position and his favorite position. And I think that's why, he's probably looking at this deal, because he can go there, he can be the number one choice, he can get himself playing for one of the two Scottish sides week in, week out, and that will very much put him on the radar. It puts him right in front of Gregor Townsend and basically says, pick me. You have to pick me, get my international career going. So I think he'll be quite frustrated at the fact that he did declare for Scotland. He doesn't regret it either. He says so. He said, no regrets playing for Scotland whatsoever. But I definitely think he'll be frustrated at the fact that he hasn't been able to play multiple games. He wants to play the Six Nations. This is kind of the thing. He wants to go to a World Cup for Scotland. That's what he wants to do. And at the moment, he's not playing enough at the Sharks to be able to do that. So I think a move for him is exactly what's needed. Obviously, to Scotland, it makes the most sense to really get him back into the international frame. But the main thing I think for him is just to find playing opportunities wherever he can. Move to a club where he can play week in, week out, and get the exposure and get the minutes under his belt that he needs to really compete. So that's kind of the main sort of transfer stories. Obviously, the big one was Edel van der Merwe leaving to the Sharks. That was confirmed last week. Very depressing. A couple of other players potentially departing the lines, like Maurice Lowe, who has confirmed that. So lots of movement between the different teams. We will be able to confirm a few more moves, hopefully in the next couple of weeks as the season starts to wind down. Let me know of any other players you're interested in monitoring in terms of transfer news down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.